My God, my God, my God, my God, people. The Formula One AWS Gran Premio del Made in Italy El del Emilia-Romagna 2025 happened this past weekend. And boy, was it a race. But before I get into the race, I'd like to touch on some news that's happened in the last couple weeks that I couldn't get to on the last episode. So, of course, as the writing on the wall predicted, Franco Colapinto is now alongside Pierre Gasly in the second Alpine car, dropping Jack Doohan, however the hell you say his name, out of his race seat after 6 races. Can't say I'm surprised, but what I am surprised about is Flavio Briatore back as not officially team principal, but he's basically team principal. Isn't that great? In other news, Max Verstappen and Kelly Piquet are now parents of the same child. And boy, is that daddy energy showing on the racetrack. Speaking of racetracks, Max Verstappen has been spotted at the Nürburgring, I believe, under the alias of Franz Hermann, not to be confused with former Nazi police officer Hermann Franz, was seen testing a GT3 car and apparently broke the lap record by some 2 seconds. Very much something he'd do. Anything but be at home. And that's why I love him. So into the race weekend we go. Kimi Antonelli's home race, born in, I believe, Bologna, some 40, 50 kilometers from the racetrack. That's neat. And he also got to bring all of his classmates. And that's a very fun sight to see. About 20 Italian kids wearing Mercedes gear. This was also Yuki's second home race, as he does live near Imola. Speaking of Yuki, as we jump into qualifying, had a awful crash. And it's great to see that he was able to walk away from that one. And it's also great to see that the Red Bull mechanics could rebuild that thing in one night. Franco Colapinto crashes in his Alpine quality debut. That kind of, hurts. But he'll get over it. And so will his ridiculous Argentinian fans that seem to take over the stands. I'm just kidding. I actually kind of like him. I just don't see all the hype, especially after Brazil last year, when he spun it under the safety car. But had that not happened, it could have been a whole different race, but that's regardless. Both the Ferraris get knocked out in Q2, hence the Charles Leclerc, my God. I mean, I don't know what this was. It probably wasn't a pace thing. I mean, the car was good on Sunday. I just don't see why they couldn't have hooked up a good lap on Saturday. I mean, track space is an issue. This racetrack is too small for these cars now. Hence why this track will not be on the calendar anymore after this year. Which is sad, because I love this track. This is probably one of my favorite tracks to play on the F1 game, because of all the funny names for the corners, like Tamburello and Villeneuve, which is, just the name of the racer. And my favorite, Acqua Minerale, because of all the undulation. I like how it feels like a roller coaster. Very fun. Anywho, Ferrari fucked it up. Who didn't fuck it up, though? The Aston Martins. I was clapping my hands when the Aston Martins managed to put it into the top 10 in Q2 on medium tires. I mean, I get it. The track was definitely rubber. The track was heating up, but I didn't think it would be that good enough to run medium tires and put it in the top 10. But as we'll find out, it didn't go so well in the race. Oscar Piastri takes pole by the narrowest of margins again, which is usually how qualifying's been going this year. It's usually the McLarens and then Max less than a tenth of a second behind. Max behind Oscar, and then George Russell, and then Lando Norris in fourth. The race starts, and Oscar and Max, truthfully, don't have that great of a start. George Russell, on the other hand, probably could have overtaken both had Oscar not been holding a very tight V formation with the other two drivers behind him. Which is why Max was able to catch some kind of ridiculous slipstream, or just the fact that under braking he's just a genius, but manages to pull off one of the greatest turn one moves I think we'll ever see. Right around the outside. He probably didn't plan on doing it, but he did it, and that's what champions do. Pierre Gasly and Charles Leclerc come to tangle at Piratella, but if you watch Charles Leclerc's onboard, he wasn't even close to Pierre Gasly. Pierre drove himself off the road. He didn't leave himself enough space, which is sad. And that ruined his race, honestly. And he was in for some points, which seems to be what happens to him this season. I mean, I think Alpine only has 7 points so far, and that's all because of Pierre. And it's all kind of because of luck, because every time he qualifies in the top 10, some shit seems to happen. Lando Norris overtakes George Russell at Villeneuve chicane for third place. And at this point, Max is already leading by like 2 seconds. And this is probably about lap 12. And for whatever reason I can't think of, McLaren decides to pit Oscar? This was a terrible move, not just because a safety car would come out about 10 to 15 laps later, but just because this wasn't anywhere near the pit window. And I don't know if this just shows that the McLarens, whilst good on their tires and clean air, are hard on their tires and dirty air. But I can't think of a single reason why McLaren would pit Oscar so early. Like, why not, try to cover off Max or something? So Oscar comes out and he's like, I think I don't know, not even the top 10. He just kind of, he climbs his way up, of course. And speaking of climbing his way up, has to come across Yuki Tsunoda. Yuki Tsunoda, who, by the way, started in the pit lane because of his qualifying crash. And my driver of the day for starting in the pit lane and finishing in P10. What a guy. Anyways, Yuki is forced to try to kind of block Oscar, but he doesn't even try. I think Yuki just wanted to bring the car home. And you know what? Fair to him. Like I've said this before, someone's got to score points in the second Red Bull seat, even if it's just one. So by lap 29, Esteban Ocon's engine decides to put itself in a chokehold, thus bringing out the virtual safety car. This basically sealed the deal for Max, who, I mean, let's be honest, he already sealed the deal at turn 1. But if he was ever going to win this race, for sure, this kind of did it for him. Anyways, Him, Alex Albon, Lewis, and some others, maybe even Lando, I think, all pitted for hards. They all started on the mediums or something like that. Maybe Lewis, I don't know what he did. But Lewis Hamilton, for starting 12th, he was flying today too. Speaking of flying, Alex Albon, he was almost in on a podium. Williams for podium? Williams? Anyways, Lewis is flying, passing like Isaac Ajar, Kimi Antonelli. Kimi Antonelli, unfortunately, has to park it up at home, thus bringing out the full course safety car on lap 46. Max and Lando pit for fresh hards. Piastri has to stay on his old hards. Or maybe he did pit. I don't know. But he was on old tires. Not on old tires once again. Alex Albon, who could have overtaken Oscar Piastri. Williams? It was a long safety car. Something like 7 laps. Everyone was complaining about it. Speaking of complaining, Lando Norris sussing out Oscar's tires, because Oscar stayed out and Lando pitted. Oscar being on his old tires. Lando's talking about, I don't want to be that guy and say let me past him. But he is on old tires. Just saying. And this is kind of why I don't like Lando. Anywho, the safety car comes in for a 10-lap showdown. And as Max always does when he's leading a safety car lineup, he waits until the last corner and then just fucking bolts. And with Lando and Oscar fighting behind, by the time Lando got past Oscar, by the way, no team rules on this one. They just kind of let him duke it out, which was stupid. I mean, they knew Lando was probably going to get past anyway, but if they truly, I think they know they can't do anything. They cannot tell, because Oscar is leading the championship, they can't just tell him to cede position. If he gets overtaken, he gets overtaken. It is what it is. Papaya rules. Anyways, Max is 4 seconds ahead by this point, so he's already going to win. Charles and Alex Albon are duking it out. And Charles, once again, he didn't really push Gasly off the road, but he definitely pushed Albon off the road. Albon, who was only less than 2 seconds behind Oscar in third, and could have had him. There was like 3 laps, maybe 4 laps left. They were on lap 60, I believe. But anyways, going around the first corner, Alex goes off the road. Lewis and Charles pass him until Charles is told to give back the position, thus putting Lewis in 4th, Alex in 5th, and Charles in 6th. Fantastic finish for Williams once again, by the way, finishing Alex in 5th, and I think Sainz was in 8th. Yes, he was in 8th. And it's crazy how Williams now are complaining about getting 5th. Oh, how the turntables. So Max wins, followed by Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. And did I forget to mention Fernando Alonso, who's the unluckiest fucking driver in the world? Poor Fernando. But the top 10 finishers of the 2025 Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix, I'm not going to say the whole name again, because it's bullshit. And also, RIP to this Grand Prix. Really cool that the last year Max wins his fourth consecutive Grand Prix at this track. So much so to the point where even the Tifosi were chanting his song during the national anthem. Sorry, distraction. Top 10 finishers: Max Verstappen, Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, Lewis Hamilton, Alex Albon, Charles Leclerc, George Russell, Carlos Sainz, Isaac Hadjar. By the way, Isaac Hadjar, definitely, if not Kimi Antonelli, Isaac Hadjar certainly the best rookie of the bunch. I mean, you would think Liam Lawson, this guy, man, he hasn't gotten his groove back, obviously. But you would think Liam Lawson, with like somewhat more experience than Isaac Hadjar, would put some points in with this RB car. But the guy can't even seem to get out of Q1 sometimes. So it's just really neat to see that Isaac Hadjar's crushing this season. I mean, this is a night and day comparison to that first race of the season in Melbourne when he spun out on the formation lap. Good on him. And good on Yuki Tsunoda, who finished 10th, who started in the pit lane. I believe I mentioned this already. Last week I said that Red Bull would have a bad weekend, and boy was I glad I was wrong. Max ended up winning, and Yuki finished in 10th. What a weekend to celebrate the 400th race for the team. And Max's, I believe, 64th race win. I said that Oscar Piastri would win. That did not happen. And I also said that Kimi Antonelli would get on the podium. Wrong. I'm a big dumb dummy. But I'm an optimist, I think. Monaco is next week, the second race of this triple header of Europe. Or oh yeah, Spain. Spain is after Monaco, that's right. And then Canada. Anywho, Monaco, the grand jewel of the Formula One calendar. But probably one of the worst racetracks we could think of. Who am I kidding? I'd still love to go someday. It's a sight to behold, but it's not great for racing. My predictions for the 2025 Monaco Grand Prix starts with Charles Leclerc will have a terrible weekend. You know, last year he won, and we thought, oh, the Monaco curse is broken. But, you know, once a curse is supposedly broken, and he finally wins it, what's the expectation from here? I mean, anything less than winning it is still failure. So I think Charles Leclerc will have another very disappointing weekend. And who knows, maybe this will make him decide he should probably leave Ferrari someday. Maybe. Who knows where he'd go after Ferrari? My second prediction is that this new mandatory two-stop and some potential rain that's forecasted will certainly cause a safety car, which will shake up the top 10 for sure. I don't know if this is so much as a prediction, or, I mean, safety cars tend to happen a lot at Monaco. It's almost a foregone guarantee. But how that tangles with the mandatory two stops, we'll see what happens. And because of this is why my third prediction is that Max Verstappen will come out on top. Because when strategy is in play and you need fast calls, it's what Red Bull does. And I'm not sure that the McLaren boys will have a very good strategy call on their end. I mean, because they'll probably be fighting each other. Max Verstappen will probably take the pole position by the skin of his teeth, or the skin of his knuckles, whatever the saying is. And that's all it takes at Monaco. And when he's out in front, you kind of get the best possible strategy calls on everything. I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of Not Another Formula One podcast. Thank you for listening. And be sure to smash that motherfucking like button. And subscribe, and maybe comment if you're feeling social. That's up to you, though. I'm not going to force you to do anything. Until next week, peace.